So thank you. So this is a paper about executive compensation. So when the firm, when the board is going to care about, let's say, climate risk, how can you use incentives to incentivize this when also you have some measures of social and environmental performance? Okay. So you might have seen that a lot in the press. People have strong views about this. So some people say it's obvious if you care about the climate, why not tie CEO pay to the firm performance on that dimension. Other people also have strong views. They say that it's ridiculous, it doesn't work, it's going to be counterproductive. Data is not standardized, it's all over the place. The metrics are all over the place. The system is going to be game, whichever system you come up with. So we don't really know what to do. And so, well, that's when economists can come in and write a model, right? Because we don't really have a model that incorporates this type of concern. So we try to do just that in this paper. Okay, so it's a joint work with Nicolas Seguet from HEC Montreal. And essentially, so in this paper, trying to address some standard arguments against ESG-based compensation, including some made by my co-author, Alex Edmonds. First one is that, well, there's several aspects to ESG performance. Two, I would say, more fundamental ones is that ESG performance is poorly measured. Not only that, but there's no consensus on how to measure ESG performance. There's disagreement. If we look at ESG scores, even on a very specific measure of specific dimension, I should say, of ESG, they're all over the place. There's different ways to measure performance on a single dimension. And the third concern is that ESG incentives, even the best incentives you can come up with based on these measures, they can be gamed, right? In the sense that you're going to hit the target but miss the point. You're going to increase the performance, which is measured, but you're not going to really necessarily increase the, let's say, the output that we care about. Okay. So how do we address this issue? So we're extending like a standard principal agent model where you're trying to give incentives to the agent with multitasking, because you care about, the agent must do several different things to improve performance. It's not just about financial performance, also about environmental performance, for example. But we also want to capture the fact that this environmental performance, for example, is poorly measured, so it's imperfectly measured, and also that an incentive system is going to be gamed. So how do we do this? Essentially, we're saying we refer to the social productivity of some investment. So let's say I invest $1 into the climate, so to speak. I'm going to improve, so to speak, the climate on my emissions by a certain amount. Okay, so that would be the actual social performance of the firm. However, the measure is not going to be a true measure of the firm's productivity, of its true productivity on this dimension, but it's going to be a biased measure. So imperfect measurement. Furthermore, the manager is going to know the bias at the time when he or she makes investment decisions. So the manager will be able to fully game whichever system you come up with. Okay, so that's what we do in the model, and this is a new. That's an innovation. Actually, we use a timing assumption from Edmonds and Gabay in their 2011 RFS paper. What are the results? Okay, so we address the arguments against ESG-based compensation. What do we find? First of all, so we find that if the board has some, we call that warm glow preferences, wants to improve, for example, the climate, the board is going to use some ESG-based compensation if the level of investment in that regard is greater than the one that will maximize the stock price. Okay, you want to provide incentives to improve the climate over and beyond what will maximize the stock price. Then you use ESG-based compensation, even though it can be gamed. Okay. Second, we find that actually this kind of heterogeneity in performance measurement on the ESG dimension, which is often used to ridicule this measure, is actually a good thing. Why is that? Because if you have a variety of ways to measure ESG performance, it's much harder to game this from the perspective of a manager. Okay, it's easy to game just one measure that you understand pretty well. It's very hard to game 6 or 8 different measures which are built very differently. Okay, so actually this heterogeneity in that regard, for governance purposes, for interest alignment, is a good thing. And that's the second contribution of our paper. And I'm out of time. Thank you.